And all of our speakers will receive a LASCON challenge coin, as well as a hoodie. And our keynote speakers will get a nice little gift from the conference. So thank you.
Cool. Hi, everyone. You should bring that with you so I don't accidentally speak into it, because I'm already mic'd up.
Yeah, it's off.
It's good?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, I'm Tanya. How's it going? Welcome to LASCON. Yes. I've never been to Austin before, and so far it's been really delicious and welcoming. So today we're going to talk about purple is the new black, so modern approaches to application security. All right, okay, so today we're going to talk about red team, which is offensive security, right? And then we're going to talk about blue team, which is defensive security. We're going to talk about purple team, which is collaborative security. And we're going to talk a bit about this. How many see security people like this? Like we're badasses and we're criminals and we're dangerous. That's not what I see when I look around this room and when I look around all the people I've worked with. I see something a bit more like this. I personally feel that like what we do is a noble profession. We're protecting people. We're helping developers make more secure software. That's what application security people do. Who here is a developer or writes code? Yeah, okay. Who here does security? Yeah, see, we should all be friends. Perfect. So that's like the gist of the talk. This is the mandatory About Me slide where I try to prove that I am qualified to give my own talk. So I like punk rock, and I'm Tanya Janka. This is also me. I clean up nicely. And I'm on the internet, and I'm called She Hacks Purple because I'm a purple teamer, which you will learn all about today. I started my own company, and we're called Security Sidekick. And I get the best title ever. I'm totally obsessed with OWASP. I talk about OWASP in all my talks, even when it doesn't necessarily make sense, because that's my community, and those are my people. I started a thing called WOSEC. So if you're a woman, we have a chapter of WOSEC here in Austin. And it's like women of security, and we just hang out and make friends. And I'm part of the DevSlop team, Sloppy DevOps, that's us. Okay, so hopefully you're like, geez, all right. So these are the 4 things we're gonna cover in the talk. I really like to be super organized when I give a talk. Oh good, Sophos is really upset with me because I won't uninstall Metasploit. We're gonna talk about collaboration, empathy, and advocacy, which I know you're like, I thought this was a tech talk. It's gonna be okay. Then we're going to talk about security tactics for modern applications. So I'm not going to talk about like, oh, how to make sure SQL injection doesn't happen. I feel we should know that. I'm just going to talk about the new, weirder, cooler stuff because everyone else already talks in depth about that. We're going to talk about automating boring stuff. I write code so I don't have to do things twice. And we're going to talk about continuous learning, which is why you are all here today. All right, let's do this. Let's get purple. Okay, so this is a Venn diagram of Venn diagrams. Yeah, I know, I'm a nerd. But so I know you're all at LASCON, so most of you already know a lot of the things I'm gonna say in this very short 2-minute segment of definitions. But I wanna make sure that everyone is with us for the whole talk. Sometimes super advanced talks, they like skip ahead to things. I wanna make sure you're all with me. So just, if you already know this, just take pictures and tweet out the hashtag. What's the hashtag again? LASCON, ASX? ATX, okay. What is AppSec? It's any and everything you do to make your software more secure. So if you are grepping through your source code and removing an old function that you now know is insecure, if you had a pen test and then you fixed the things, if you are just coming here and learning about how to make more, all of those things are AppSec things. They're all related to application security. I said that. Next, what's DevSecOps? So according to me, and since I'm on stage and I have the mic, that's what you get to hear. I believe that it is what AppSec professionals do when we work in DevOps environments. So I know DevOps is supposed to embody security, and I promise I will stop saying DevSecOps as soon as they all promise to only release secure software. So until then, we're at an impasse. So my friend Imran taught me this. He's like, it's just you doing AppSec, but you have to adjust and you have to change so that you fit in to DevOps. Awesome. So what is a red team? So it's attackers, it's offense, right? So it's adversarial style security testing. It's often against production, which is scary. It helps us find real risks. So it's not paper exercise like threat modeling, where you come up with all the things. It's like, what can we actually find wrong now? It's not cheap, and you have to be careful, but it's pretty amazing. Okay, so what is blue team? Blue team are our defenders. They protect us. They ensure our defenses are effective. They make sure we have defenses. They are the people that do the monitoring, the logging, the patching, the bug fix. They do all the things that make life good and smooth. Okay, so then what's purple team, right? So according to me, it's collaboration, empathy, and advocacy is part of it. So what is purple team? Some people tell me it's blue team plus red team, but both of them do network security. They do all sorts of other things, right? Like, it's not an encompassing of both of those. I believe purple's in the middle. And what our job is to do is to collaborate, communicate, and contribute, cooperate. That bridge in between the developers and the security team that make them get along and work well together instead of having coffee at separate coffee houses. They do teaching, they provide tools, they help with learning, often known as the bridge in between the two teams. I'm gonna throw this clicker out after. Purple team is AppSec as a whole, and it overlaps the red team and the blue team. So it's not everything the red team does, it's just some of the things the red team does. And it's some of the things the blue team does. That's why they have different names. They hold consultations with developers. They give guidance, they give assistance, they give enablement. They give developers tools and teach them how to use them. They don't yell at developers. They create tools if they have to. They create documentation that people can read and understand, so they don't say, oh, your key should be ephemeral, because that's vague and doesn't mean anything, and a developer can't code that. They say, I want our session IDs to be destroyed every hour and replaced after 15 minutes of inactivity, this, that. It's like very specific things that developers can then go and code out. And they advocate for security and for developers. I'm gonna just say that again. So they advocate for both the developers and the security. I don't know if any of you have ever worked with someone where all they can see is what they need at work, and they'll burn down the rest of the building to get like their part done. I've worked at places where they're like, we're gonna put in this security thing, even though it's gonna break everything and everyone hates us, and we're gonna get this much win, but we're gonna break everything else. That is not purple team. That doesn't work in the long run. So it is my opinion that purple team is a modern approach to application security. Okay, so what do I mean by advocacy? Because a lot of people are like, what does that mean? So my last job, I was an advocate. And advocating for security means, well, let's look at the slide. Okay, so principles for success. I'm not sure why that's so dark. Sorry about that, it's super bright on my screen. Okay, so advocates fight for the things that help the people that they're advocating for. So they're fighting for a cause, they're fighting for a policy, whatever the thing is. I used to work somewhere and we had the stupidest password policy ever. It had to be super, super complex and 8 characters long. We were trying to talk them into like 18 or 16 or 20 characters, but it didn't need to be complex. And they're like, what if we went to 6 characters and it wasn't complex? What? No! The executives are like, no passwords? Like, do you mean passwordless? Like single sign? And they're just like, no, like just do away with that. And so it didn't go well. But the point is, Okay, so you need a few things to make sure you advocate successfully, and one is independence. So when do we want it? We want it on demand. I don't want to wait for a ticket. I want it right now. So whatever you can do to make sure people can get the things they need from the security team when they need it, as opposed to when you're available, yes. Confidentiality. So if someone comes to me and tells me, like, I've made this mistake, they need to know I'm not going to shame them in the next team meeting, right? They need to know I will keep their confidence. Human-centered approach. Remember, there's people at the other end of the job that you're doing. Sometimes I have forgotten that. Empowerment. So I consider this giving them tools, giving them processes that actually work, that are actually efficient, that are not hell. And then giving them the knowledge so they can actually do things themselves, make their own decisions. Equal opportunity. I don't know if any of you have ever worked somewhere where they're like, only the senior techs need to learn security, the junior techs are stupid. I'm like, oh, I would hate to work for someone like you that would call me that. I think that security is for everyone, not just the senior people. Like maybe there's layers to how much you teach each level, but we're not advocating for developers if we're only teaching some of them and excluding others. Equal opportunity. Well, I guess I already made that point. Oh yeah, no. Accountability on both sides. So if I make a mistake, I want people to be able to tell me I made a mistake nicely so that I can correct it and fix it later. If you have a good relationship between the security team and the developers, you can actually discuss things like, okay, so we did this, like how'd that happen? Let's look into it. You can do a blameless style postmortem, a way to look at things where it's not Alice's fault or Bob's fault. It's like, oh, that process was missing, or oh, that safeguard was broken, and that stopped this from happening, or it broke that. Lastly, we want accessibility. So we want to make security possible for all. Sometimes that means you have to make special situations for different teams. I don't mean accessibility as in putting, like definitely a building is accessible, that's what most of us think it is, but I mean making tech accessible too. Okay, next, empathy. It turns out that soft skills are actually life skills, but just some people don't have them. You can't actually get very far in tech if you have no personal skills. If like you can't talk to people and not have them hate you later, or if you can't communicate something clearly to someone, like you're never gonna be a senior tech, right? You're not gonna go very far in your career. And empathy is you actually thinking about something from someone else's point of view. So if I am the security person and I need to, who cares about the Phoenix project? Yeah, okay, I see a lot of hands. There's like this part of the project where they want to put in this security tokenization thing. And the security team's like, well, we just need it. And then it broke everything under the sun. And they just kept pushing and pushing, and they just didn't care because they couldn't empathize with all the other teams that maybe this wasn't the best win for everyone. Okay, so now I want to talk about idols and how we're totally obsessed with hackers. So I believe that our community is obsessed with hackers, and so is the media. I believe that people are like really, really interested, a lot more interested in hackers than I am personally. There are not this many movies about accountants. And that's because we're obsessed with only red teamers and pen testers. I run this thing, oh wait, no, let's go back. I run this thing called Mentoring Monday every Monday on the internet, where I try to match people with mentors and mentees together so that they can learn more, so we can get more people into InfoSec. The number one thing, the number two thing, number three, number four thing is web app pen testing. Everyone wants to be a pen tester, but it's because they don't know that our job exists. They don't know that there's incident responders, and that work is so important. There's people that do forensics. There's so many cool jobs that are in InfoSec that are totally badass too. But we have all these silly movies like we saw on the last slide. Can I go back? Like movie after movie after movie, because we're totally obsessed, and I don't think that that's helping our industry. Another thing that I see, because I used to be a web app pen tester, is like you get called in at the end, No one's looked at security. You come in, you're like, pew, pew. You look awesome as a pen tester because no one has done security before you got there. I don't want to look awesome. I want you to make secure apps. And so I see a lot of places just spending their entire security budget only on pen testing. They're like, we have exactly enough to test one of our 20 apps. I don't know if that's your best bang for your buck, right? And again, I believe it's because of our idolization of hacking and how that's like the only thing that matters in our industry. I believe that we are not attracting as many people as we could because of this. And this is the thing that I already told you about Mentoring Monday, how everyone always asks for that. Okay. So now that I'm done obsessing over like my rant about how we do not all need to wear hoodies all the time, even though I love hoodies, and we are not all like Mr. Robot, the rest is just going to be modern approaches to application security. So these are the types of things that the purple team's going to have to do. Okay, so zero trust. If I was in a smaller room, I would make all of you answer what these things are because I'm cruel, but we're not, so you're safe. However, at the end, I have candy if you ask a question. I stole the idea off Chloe. I had candy and I left it at home, so I bought more last night, but there's going to be a lot of candy today if you play your cards right. So zero trust is not trusting anything. I know that sounds a little bit ridiculous, but what we used to do is we used to have a perimeter. We'd have a giant firewall. And then if someone got in, we're like, we just assume you're great. You can, like, sure, go look at all my servers. You can come in everywhere. Now instead, between apps, they don't trust. There's no reason that like your app should talk to my app's database. No, my database will only talk to my app and nothing else. Right? All the ports are closed. Everything's closed all the time. It's only if you actually need access that you open it. So by default, it's closed. It's often coupled with assume breach, right? So plan things out. Like if you were breached, where would you not want them to get? Plan things out as though things have already. Have you heard that famous quote? There are companies that have been breached and there's companies that don't know that they have been breached, right? And I like to hope that that's not actually true, but I've worked at enough places that have had breaches that it's not completely untrue. We'll just leave it at that. Okay, so serverless and logic apps. So a logic app is a trigger, and what it does is it calls a serverless app. So it's just kind of true or false. Like a thing happens, and the logic app, when it's on, it calls a serverless app. And a serverless app is like a tiny little script or a tiny little app that runs in a container. It does not run all the time. It only runs when it's triggered. So what it does is it explodes a container, it runs its thing, and then it self-destructs and it's gone. So you pay 4 cents a month instead of having to host that all the time if you never really use it, right? So they're very efficient, but there are different application security concerns. So first of all, like do all the good AppSec stuff you would normally do, like validate your inputs, please. Do all of those things, but on top of that, you have to do other things. Monitor and log your functions. I know they're little, but you want to know if they're being run like 50,000 times a month or 5 times a month. You want to know, you want to alert if someone has tried to call your login API like 55 times in a second, because humans can't do that. And if you don't log or monitor, you don't know. That means I, as an incident responder, comes in, and then I just feel stupid the whole time because I can't help because I have no idea what happened. You need to use secure coding conventions. You also want to make sure that you secure and verify the data in transit, but also, I think I have some more here. Plus, we want to employ API gateways. So make sure as things travel that they're, like it'll just handle a lot of the stuff for you, and it'll be like a gate. So you can only get in and call these things if you've been approved through the gateway, right? It's like a login, and then you get all the fun features. It's like that, but for computers. Awesome. I already said monitor and log. Oh yeah, monitor and log the things, but then put it into the SIM so that your SOC can actually see what's going on. I've definitely worked at a bunch of places when I was a software developer and we logged that stuff into nowhere. No one ever saw it. And now that I work in security, I'm like, what were we doing there? We also want to manage secrets in a secret store. So there's like all the clouds have their own secret stores, and then there's like a bunch of third-party ones that you can use. But if you have a secret, don't handle it in your code. get a company to do it for you. There's a bunch of open source ones that are free. I'm not going to recommend which one you get, just get one. And lastly, try to deploy functions with minimal granularity. So just have a serverless app do one thing. Don't have it do 25 things. Then you need 25 serverless apps. Then you don't have to run them as often. Then if one breaks, you still have 24 that are working. It's breaking things down into smaller pieces. And do I have one more on this? Maintain isolated function parameters. I feel like I really should move it a little faster. You need to assume that the parameter of your function is just like an app. So if you have an API that calls another API or a serverless app that calls another serverless app, it still needs to re-authenticate and reauthorize. Like it needs to know, oh, for sure, because you don't want someone else calling that second API or that second serverless app directly. It needs to be able to say, oh no, you're not my person. You're not that API that's allowed calling me. Okay, last thing on that. Third-party components and library management. They estimate 70% of code in all new apps is actually libraries, frameworks, third-party components, fancy JavaScript that's from a framework that you did not write. You accept all of that risk when you put it into your app. So we need to protect against that. And so a lot of them call it open source software scanning. It doesn't matter if it's proprietary or not. Like, .NET's awesome. It's still possible it has vulnerabilities, right? And some of the versions do. It's well documented. And so even if it's not open source, you still need to check it. Okay, so there are a bunch of companies that make tools that check this. I suggest you use two, not one, because they all check in different ways. Some of them check the CVE database. Some companies are looking at CWEs now. A bunch of them do their own research, and they all find different stuff. And so if you just have one, then you just get one company's opinion. So if you can afford it, if you have time, if you have the ability, do two. You also want to scan your repo once a week, once a day, whatever it is that you feel you can afford. And then the other thing you should do is if you have a pipeline, scan with the different tool in your pipeline. So like, let's say you only release things once a month. If you're only scanning things in your pipeline, then you wouldn't see it for a whole month, potentially, right? But if you scan every 5 seconds, or you release every 5 seconds in a pipeline, that's great, but maybe the other tool will find something that it didn't. It's just, you'll find more stuff that way. And lastly, I already said that. Awesome, yes. Okay, next, online storage, the crown jewels. Everyone has heard of storage buckets that are open, that are not secure. I think like Twitter spilled that out again last night. It's like an old story that we don't like. However, there are things we can do so that that stops happening. I would like us to have new things that we make fun of. So you can lock all your buckets down by default. No matter which cloud you're using, you can set a template, and just no one's allowed making any sort of storage unless it follows that template. And then for sure, you know that they can't do that by accident, right? Like you've brought the horse to water. Maybe a better analogy. You also want to classify your data. You want to classify it as like, this is top secret, this is public, et cetera, so that when I, as the incident responder, come in, I know how bad my day is. It really, really, really helps. I have definitely been called in and seen, oh, all of that is publicly accessible data. Awesome, so like everyone can chill out a little bit. Like, it's still bad, but it's not as bad. Again, you want to monitor access, file integrity, port sniffing, et cetera, with alerts. I know everyone's like, it's just storage. Storage is really important. All your important stuff is there. Okay, lastly, well, not lastly, containers and orchestration. So a container is the smallest part of an operating system that you need to run whatever your app is that's running on it. So while Windows might be 2 gigs of hard drive space and 2 gigs or more of memory, you might have a container that only needs 2 megs of data of hard drive space and then like 4 megs of memory. It's so much smaller, and it's just the core parts that you need, right? And then orchestration is management of all that, deleting them, launching them, all of those things. I imagine like a magical thing in a cartoon where everything just comes up and music plays like Disney. So again, follow all the same security network things that you would do. Plus, there are new configurations and you have to learn them. Sorry. There are going to be new tools to scan these things. Sorry. There's new types of vulnerabilities to watch out for, but it's a lot of the same stuff. It's just different, if that makes sense. More. One of the big things is you need to protect who can create or edit containers. Apparently this is a fancy new attack thing that you didn't have as much with traditional types of networking. But you just, basically, these are just kind of the same. You need to like patch things or replace them with newer things. You need to scan the things. You need to apply zero trust. You need to verify that you have good configurations. I know that was an anticlimactic slide. It's just like you have to do the hard work. Sorry. APIs, microservices. Dun, dun, dun. I have worked so many places where they're like, oh, those APIs? Oh, they're not in scope. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. I remember interviewing to like do a pen test on a mobile app, and I'm like, can I just assume all the APIs are in scope? And they looked at me, they're like, how did you find those? And I was like, what? They're right there. So we have to follow all the same stuff that we normally do, even if they're small, even if they don't run that often. Okay, but plus, service mesh. Service mesh is an infrastructure layer that basically just encrypts everything and makes things a lot nicer. It's not sexy, but it works. Standardization or templating for your org. So if everyone follows the same templates, all the APIs talk the same way, life could be a lot better. Strict linting of calls to ensure that it follows the protocol. So the DevSlot project, one of the things we released was like an app with vulnerable APIs, and like we could just call whatever functions we wanted, but without the correct HTTP verb. So we would use delete or post in reverse, like when you shouldn't, and then cause havoc. And so if you make sure that everyone is using the same verbs that they should, and they're like linting's like the grammar police, basically. Okay, back. Throttling and resource quotas. No human's gonna log in 100 times in a second. No human's gonna log in 100 times in an hour. So if someone is calling your API a lot, slow it down, throttle it. And resource quotas, like don't allow someone to, no one's gonna try to log into your app hundreds of times per day. It's just not natural. When I first joined Microsoft, one of my colleagues had this test box that he had put outside our network way off in Azure that he'd totally forgotten about, and so I found it. And someone had been trying to manually brute force it for months. It was the best for my demos. We just let them keep attacking it because it was so good. Like this person had no life. They were like the worst hacker ever. Eventually they went away. It was sad. So you want to authenticate and then authorize. If you don't know who this person is, don't go through the authorization. Don't waste your time. Do that second. And lastly, there's two more things. Hide what you can. Do not share. Do not have verbose error messages. Don't tell them, oh, that's the wrong verb. Just be like, error, wrong call. Oh, that's waitlist your approved HTTP verbs. So like I said, like deletes, posts, gets. That's usually all you actually need. Okay, modern tooling. So there are a bunch of new types of tools for AppSec. You do not have to buy them all. You do not have to learn them all. But you should definitely know they exist so you know what your options are, because things have really changed in the past couple years. Okay, so I asked interactive application security testing. So while you're using the app, this little app inside of it just goes, that's my best. That's why I'm in marketing. But basically it happens like in real time while you're doing your app. RASP, real-time application security protection. It's the fanciest WAF you'll ever see. No, just kidding. But it works like a WAF. It's similar to a WAF except for without the big shield in Star Trek where it comes up and it covers the whole ship. Instead, it's more at the application level. But basically it's looking at input and it's like, oh, that doesn't look good. I don't think so, no thanks. File integrity monitoring, which I believe goes very close with application waitlisting. So this is the thing I'm a big fan of. Is application waitlisting and file integrity somewhat painful sometimes? Yes, it is. Does it make sure I never get malware? Yes. So file integrity monitoring is like all of your source files in your operating system. It watches them so they don't change. And waitlisting means only allow these apps to run. So the first thing malware does is it tries to start. Oh, it's not allowed. Application waitlisting, it's not on the list. Great, I will change my name to system.d or whatever. Oh wait, I'm not allowed changing that file. And then it can't do anything. Installing this on your servers, is it fun? No. Does it work? Yes. Cloud native controls. So every single one of the clouds has now made something new for their own cloud that only works for them. Yep. And they would like you to use it. They are customized for your environment. You have to decide if this is good for you or not. Proof of concepts are suggested. Adding security tools to your DevOps pipeline. So that's all I ever talk about in my other talks, so I'm gonna skip that. Haha, just kidding, I made its own slide. Customizable alerts, automated responses. So a thing that is fancy in the cloud is you can have like these triggers come up called logic apps. And when it triggers, you can actually write serverless apps that respond. I believe they're calling it playbooks, most of the cloud services. But the idea that I could come in the morning and receive an email, someone was trying to brute force this, so we blocked their IP, and then it was done, and no one had to call me, yes, that's beautiful. I don't like responding to incidents. It sounds like it. I don't like it. And application inventory tools. So there are now tools that will tell you all the apps that you have. It's nice to know. Okay, next, modern tactics. So previously that was tools. Now we're going to talk about strategies and tactics and things that you can do. Adding security tools to your DevOps pipeline. I know I already said that, but it's kind of a tool and it's kind of a tactic. So who here uses pipelines at work? Yeah, it's becoming slightly more popular. I think over time, we will continue to automate things because doing things manually is boring. Negative unit testing. So who here has used unit tests before, where it tests the smallest amount of code possible? So you can take those and you can add payloads to them. And by that, I mean like negative abusive code. You can make sure that it fails gracefully. And you can have your developers run those when they run the rest of the tests. This takes time. It's not cheap, but it works really, really well. You can have regressive security testing every time your developer runs those tests. And they have to run the tests before they check in. Breaking security into smaller pieces and having security sprints. I talk about this a lot too. But basically, you can't have, how do I explain? You can't do a 3-week code freeze while I do code review anymore. No one's going to wait for that. So we have to adjust. So that strategy is about adjusting and sprinting if developers are sprinting too. And turning pen tests into unit tests. So whenever I would pay someone else to come do a pen test, I would take that like a shopping list because those developers made my other apps and they probably made the same mistakes. So I would go look for the same things. And if you have unit tests, some of the things from your pen tests might make fantastic malicious unit tests. Tuning tools for automation and efficiency. Do not just plunk in a security tool and walk away. Make sure it doesn't break everything. Make sure that there's not any false positives. I've worked at a lot of places where that is most of the work in security tools, is tuning out the false positives. It's not fun. It's worth the effort. Automated repository scanning for vulnerabilities for your third-party components. If you can get it to do code review for you, that would be magical. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I talk about this a lot, and we only have 17 minutes left. So next, DevSecOps. This is my favorite talk. This is my favorite topic, so much so that it has a heart. I'm a big fan. If you're going to do DevOps, where do we fit in, right? So to remind you, my definition is that it's application security activities in a DevOps environment. It's what I do. It's what all of you do. Adding security to the pipelines, ensuring faster security feedback every single way that you can do it, whether that be in a pipeline, whether that be creating your own libraries, whether that be sending out reminders, whatever the thing is that you do to make sure developers find out as soon as possible that they've done something wrong so it's cheaper, faster, and easier to fix. Every moment in DevOps is a teaching moment. If it's good or if it's bad, I make mistakes. I don't know about you, but I am only a mere mortal. I have made errors probably today, and that's okay. But the key is that we learn from them and we do better the next time. And if you take every single thing as a learning moment and like hold a lunch and learn or teach people. The first time I was somewhere and they did that, I hated it. We had an incident and it was awful. It was so bad. Bad things happened. Oh, it was so embarrassing. And my manager insisted on holding a lunch and learn with the developers and telling them about it. All of the badness. I'm a perfectionist. I found that really hard. All those developers from then on wanted security training. All those developers from then on were like, we're never making that mistake ever again. They fixed all of the things I asked them to. All of a sudden, I had this army behind me of people that had bought in. And I was like, you know, they're going to think we're idiots. And my manager is like, just trust me. Trust me. And he is right. Weaving security into the process for speed, ease, and efficiency, wherever you can. You're allowed to be as creative as you want to, whether you're in a DevOps environment or not. Like, it's your goal to make sure they create secure apps. It doesn't matter if you do it with bribery, like bringing in cookies or donuts. It doesn't matter. I still respect your efforts. Okay. So, oh yeah, and at the end is like a talk that I have that's about that. If you want it, I usually put links at the bottom of the screen, but these slides will be available, right? Yeah, okay, I'm seeing the organizers nod, perfect. So if you don't get it now, you can get it later. Okay, cloud security. Tanya, you can't just talk about cloud security whenever you want. So I know this is supposed to be an AppSec talk, but some apps live on the cloud, right? So if you write a really super secure app, but all of your cloud's like wide open, it doesn't look good for you. So the cloud presents a new and different set of risks. We need to adjust accordingly. I suggest you just learn the basics of it. Like, you don't need to become a cloud security expert, but if you are doing stuff and your company is in the cloud, learning the basics will set you apart from your peers, but also make sure you have good outcomes. So, oh yeah, this isn't a 45, I'm not allowed, yeah. So if you wanna know more, I have lots more stuff on that topic. Just learning the basics, I think, is not that painful, and it will really help you understand your architecture and everything for your apps. I used to only do software, and then I started learning security and networking, and it's given me this whole new view on everything I build. Okay, summary. So if you wanted to take a picture of a slide, oh, wait, no, go back. This would be the slide. So it's just, these are the topics that we just covered in this section. We're going on to the third and fourth sections, which are really short. Okay, just waiting until, because you know, like, people take out their phone, and then I don't want to be that person that's like, haha, too late. Okay, everyone's got it, good. Okay, so automate some boring stuff. And as a kitten with an Automate the Boring Stuff book. Awesome. Okay, so I want to avoid manual errors. I want my job to be challenging and interesting, not boring. I want to avoid toil. So I want to make everything faster. So I automate. So toil. So my friend Steve Murawski made this for me. Toil is, so I had never heard the term toil, but as soon as I saw this slide, I was like, yes, junior developer. I mean, no. So it's the kind of work that tends to be manual, repetitive, automatable, tactical, devoid of enduring value. Scales linearly as service grows. So let's say, oh, I remember staying late one night, and me and all my staff, we all had to upgrade to like Windows 7. And we had to stay late, and we had to manually do each machine. So that meant that Tanya could do 7, Jean-Pierre could do 7, Jean-Marc, I'm from Quebec, you know, everyone's Jean something. And it's true. And so, but like we all had to just like run around the whole night like manually doing it instead of like using an automated tool that would do it for us, right? So that's toil. No one wants to do that. So automation, our best friend. So DevSecOps, a pipeline is automation. That's what it is. You can also create a parallel security pipeline. So it's asynchronous from the developer pipeline. It doesn't go to prod. It is just something developers can kick off, and it does those long tests. Like, you know, when you do static code analysis, and it just goes on and on and on and on. That is in the asynchronous pipeline. That can run all weekend because it's not going anywhere and no one's waiting on it. And then you can come in Monday and have fun going through all the results, right? But we can automate like boring tests too. SecOps is awesome. So infrastructure as code is starting to be used more and more, where you code out the things you want and then you run it, and then it builds all the infrastructure for you in the cloud, which is really cool. I have another talk about that. And then the idea of SecOps is that you code in the security into your infrastructure, in your infrastructure's code. So it's security as code. It's awesome. Oh, that's what that slide was. Yeah. So then another thing is DevSec. So that's the AppSec side of DevOps. That's the application developer side. All the things I previously mentioned. But the results of this are we're proactive instead of reactive, right? So we can do work to prevent incidents instead of always just managing incidents. We can trust that, we're not going to be tired and make an error. We can work to upgrade security because, again, we're not just putting out fires all the time. Less time cleaning up messes, meaning more time getting things done that you actually wanted to get done. So I like to think of it DevSecOps, less toil, more triumph. Yes. Okay. Continuous learning, this is the fourth part. Every moment's a teaching moment, even if it's embarrassing. Continuous learning. So I think, I'm so sorry the slide's so dark. It's super bright on here. I don't know what's going on. Okay, so the moment we stop learning, we are in trouble. Tech changes constantly. I took almost a year off to learn French. And when I came back, things had changed. You have to keep learning all the time or you're going to be in trouble. So every moment is a teaching moment, good or bad, embarrassing or not. If you work in a place where there's psychological safety, like where you're able to express yourself and admit faults, like this is a place where you're going to get all the things done. Like when I work with people, I want them to know that they can tell me, like, I screwed up this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no problem, let's go fix it. Let's make sure it never happens again. If you yell at people, which I'm not saying I'm perfect, I've definitely lost my crap before when things have happened, right? But if you yell at people, no one's gonna trust you. So you can do this with micro lessons, lunch and learns, computer-based training, coming to here. The training that was before the conference started, there's like a million options for learning. And some of them are free, but they all require time and effort, and that's the part you have to pay. Developers and op folks constantly bring in new tech, so we have to learn about it. Because otherwise, they will release it and not tell us and just go around us. Because they do that, right? Who here thinks no one ever releases anything without telling the security team? Okay, good. Everyone here is sane. Awesome. So learning calendar blocks for learning. If you set like a weekly reminder every Thursday from like 2 till 3, like that's your time. You might not do it every week, but eventually you might make your way through a whole bunch of certifications. I ended up taking a bunch of university courses doing it that way. Job shadowing, mentoring, on-the-job learning. I'm a huge proponent for learning from others. Sharing info with other teams, so if you make a mistake or if you win. I'm a huge fan of celebrating wins. On my Slack channel at work, at the past bunch of places I've worked, I make a winning channel, and then we just brag to each other like, yes, I smashed that bug. It's awesome, and it helps encourage you and the rest of your team. Wow, this clicker. Metrics-based training, design lessons, and issues that you've had. So everywhere I've ever worked, I'll go and I'll look at all of the basic, like all the scan results that they've had, find the top 3, and then I make lunch and learns on them. You can do this too. I'll just tell you the answer right now. 2 of the top 3 are always cross-site scripting and lack of security headers. So you could just start with those now. So you could just go on Monday and do that. Build your own training specific for your org. If you can afford it, this is awesome. At Microsoft, they have this training, and it's amazing, and it's called Strike. And I told them they should sell it, and they won't. But it's so good. They have like in-depth AppSec training for every single developer, all paid for. So story time, the time that I invented DevOps. This story's not true. So I spoke at RSA and I gave a talk about DevSecOps, and this person, so one of my friends, she's like, yeah, someone came back from RSA and they're like, Tanya invented this cool thing. It's called DevOps. I was like, what? I did not say that. And she said, yeah, my colleague has not been in training for so long, they didn't know DevOps existed, had never heard of it, and thought you invented it. And I was like, not even my mom thinks I'm that cool. So conclusion. So this is going to be like a really small rant, but I promise it's short. Okay, so I am tired of everyone thinking of this guy when they think of our industry. That is not what a hacker looks like. This is what a hacker looks like. This is what a hacker looks like. Look all around this room. That's what a hacker looks like. Look in the mirror. And remember, that is what an information security professional looks like. And when we stop projecting over and over and over this hoodie thing in the dark basement, having social issues, being depressed, angry at the world, when we stop projecting that, I think we'll get a lot more people joining our industry. I'm not kidding. And also, please be nice to developers. They are our friends. Sometimes we forget and we get frustrated. Please be nice to them because we cannot do it without them. Okay, so that is, that's the end of my rant. And now I'm going to give you a bunch of resources. So you might want to get your cameras out. It's up to you. But I'm going to give you a whole bunch of things that you can follow. So the first thing, which I hope you all already do if you're at LASCON, is that you're a part of your local OWASP chapter. Even if you're not from here, there's 280 chapters around the world. And they have awesome things like this regularly. And you can meet awesome people like the people in this room. And it's free to participate, and that is wonderful. If you're a woman or identify as a woman, WOSEC welcomes you. It's like a safe space for women / we go to big events together, so none of us is the only woman there. It's nice to meet friends. There's a chapter in Austin. There's chapters. I don't even have all the chapters. We have like 30 now. I didn't update this slide. Mentoring Monday, every Monday. So if you are, okay, so who here has worked in security 2 or more years? Congratulations, you are qualified to be a mentor. I appeal to you to look up this hashtag on Twitter and answer someone. Point them at a book, offer to have a virtual coffee with them. When we let people know we want them in this industry, they're so much more likely to stay, and like you reaching out to them could be that thing that brings a new person in. Resources, me. You could follow me. I have a YouTube channel and a Twitch channel and a Twitter and a link. I have all the things. I even have a newsletter. And I just release free content all the time. And lastly, I just started a new company, and we are also going to release free content all the time. So every time I teach someone how to fix a bug, I'm going to make a video for everyone, and all of it's going to be free. So if you are interested in that, we do that too. And lastly, summary. What have we learned today? We have learned what Purple Team is. We're all experts. Who here is Purple Teamer now? Yeah, okay, so one day more hands. I know, it's hard. It's first thing in the morning, like, this talk is so long, where's the coffee? Oh, next time. We've learned about collaboration and how if we don't do it, we're gonna be in trouble. And we've learned about a bunch of modern tools and a bunch of modern practices for the win. That's what that stands for. And now I'd like to thank you for your time and attention today. I appreciate you sitting through this.